I always wanted to, take classes at the highest level I could. When I was in high school, I went to a public school. I had a great education there. And my senior year of high school, they actually, for the very first time that my school ever did this, they offered a class called AP Calculus BC. And I honestly had truly never thought of myself as a math person. I mean, I had taken, I guess higher level math classes, but I always felt that when I was in them, I had to work a lot harder than the people around me to understand what was going on. I mean, I was there, but it wasn't something that I felt just naturally came to
Strong
me,
at. Yeah.
The way that maybe writing seems more natural. I was like, okay, I can do this, but I have to work really hard and I have to study like crazy. But I was like, you know what? I want to take this class. I want to push myself. I want to get into a good college. And they're offering it. So I took it. And it was this weird thing where I felt like suddenly all the work that I had been doing up until that point, it really crystallized and really made sense in my calculus class, because all of the sorts of equations and theorems and things that you're doing in algebra and geometry, you kind of understand where they come from and how you derive them. And it was like, oh my gosh, I understand the foundation of math. And that was
a light bulb moment, right?
It was. And it was the most like insane and cool realization where I was like, I weirdly like this. And it's of course it's hard, but it's the rewarding type of thing where you find that you are capable of things that you didn't think you were capable of. And I just think that should be the goal that we have for every student in the world. Honestly, you want students to, and I really firmly believe that students are capable of learning difficult material. It's just the way that you're teaching it and the way that you're presenting it. And instead of, I believe that the new, math framework that California has doesn't really have that as its central goal, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, and talk about that, because what they're trying to do, from what I understand from your article, is kind of delay algebra, which, if you guys don't remember, if it's been that long, you got to take one class before you can take another class before you can take another class. And so talk about what California wants to do. And just to clarify, this isn't mandated, right? The school districts don't have to do it this way, but this is what California would like them to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So every couple of years, I think it's every 10 years, California looks at its, framework for teaching math, and it basically does like revisions, updates to try to improve things. So it's been working on this latest update to its math curriculum for a while. The last framework was in 2013. Now it's in 2023. And yeah, it's not binding, but it's just kind of a guiding document for school districts and teachers to use when they're developing their curriculum. So the issue that really kind of came to the fore in this framework was they wanted to decrease racial achievement gaps when it comes to math, and also to improve diversity in STEM fields, which, there's not as many girls or women, and there's not as many people of color, at high levels in STEM fields as there are white men. And so the issue was, how do we change this? And so they were looking at the racial achievement gaps, and I believe the gaps are pretty startling. It's something that about 70% of Asian students are meeting state math standards compared to just 16% of Black students. So obviously there are inequalities that are very disturbing and need to be rectified. And some of the issues that the thing that they contend is that students are, being pushed through math before they understand it, before they know what's going on. There's this race to calculus where, kids are trying to get there without understanding the math below it. And at a very early age, kids are kind of being separated into different learning levels where, there's some more proficient kids who are put into accelerated classes, and then other kids are put into less accelerated classes, and they never seem to catch up to the higher achieving kids. And so the general idea was, let's keep kids together on the same path for as long as we possibly can, because kids will, learn from each other, be challenged by each other. And then later in high school, they can kind of branch off and accelerate into different paths depending on what they want to do. The problem is that the longer you keep kids together, the later in their career they would take Algebra 1, which is kind of this like foundational math class that from that you go on to geometry, higher levels of algebra, and then to calculus. And the way that the US math curriculum is set up right now is that if you take Algebra 1 in 9th grade of your high school year, it's it's very challenging to get to calculus by your senior year of high school. The problem with that is that taking calculus as a senior, it prepares you to enter and apply to more competitive colleges that like to see that you've done that. And it makes it maybe a little bit more challenging to get a 4-year college degree in a STEM field. And so for me, the question is not, okay, if we are seeing that kids are having difficulty with Algebra 1, we're going to just force everyone to wait until 9th grade to take it and then make it harder for them to take calculus and make it harder for them to do STEM. We should think about how we can get everybody to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade in a way that is obviously going to improve their test scores and their ability to learn it. It's not the kids. It's the way we're teaching it. It's the material. And instead of artificially imposing this sort of delay that makes it harder for anyone to get to the highest level, we should be trying to put everyone, as many as we can, to the highest level.
Emily, you are speaking my language. That is exactly right.
Yes. But how does that happen? I mean, if obviously we also know the reality. We were just talking about the reality of the situation, right? Where we are as a state, as they're trying to implement this new learning standard. We have overworked, underpaid teachers. We have a teaching shortage. You're talking about a model in which kids can learn in different ways, right? Which requires a teacher to teach to different students, likely in the same class or at the same school in different ways. Is it feasible? Is it even realistic to expect in 2023, this, in California with the teaching shortage and all of that we'd be able to do something like that where, we can get everybody up to speed by 8th grade, unless you're talking about maybe adding summer school, after school programs and things like that, if the student really wants to be on that path?
It's a great question. And I think, changing how California teaches, having better quality teachers, better paid teachers, that's a whole other thing. The thing that for me is very disturbing is that what the state is proposing, we know for a fact to not work. And that's because it happened in San Francisco Unified. And since 2015, they've been requiring kids to take Algebra 1 only in 9th grade. You can't take it before. And they were saying, this is going to revolutionize, this is going to make everything better. They just had a study come out from Stanford University, and it changed nothing. Black students did not take advanced math at a statistically significant higher level in any way. Hispanic enrollment went up by 1 percentage point, which is pretty small. Yeah. And Asian and white enrollment actually declined initially. And then I think it did bounce back. But the only way it bounced back was what you were talking about. They went to summer classes, they got private tutors, or they did this thing where they took a compressed math year where instead of taking, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus, you're actually combining in one of those years, you're combining those two classes, algebra 2 and geometry, or algebra 2 and pre-calculus, and then calculus.
Geometry killed me. Like I need a whole year just for geometry. It killed me in high school. So
my daughter just did a combined year of 8th grade and 9th grade math. So when she goes into high school now, this coming fall, she'll take 10th grade math. And to kind of bridge the gap on that. And that's because of what Emily's talking about, so she can get to the higher math while she's still in high school, right? You kind of have to get a jump start on it. And if you don't do that in 8th grade, then you're already behind the 8 ball going into high school, which sucks because a lot of people, they're not thinking about that. So this summer she took a 5-week algebra, twice a week for an hour, algebra 1 review class, just to make sure she had everything down. And now starting this week for the next 5 weeks, she'll take an algebra 2 class, which is what is coming up in high school. So she can just kind of be prepared for what's coming up and get those concepts, at least be familiar with them before school starts.
Was she good at math? I mean, does she like math?
She's not like Emily said, math doesn't come easy to her. She's the person in the class who has to work at it. That's why we do the review during the summer. So she goes in there with confidence.
It's so funny, and I asked, is she good at math? And I feel like we always ask that of girls, which is kind of the point of what California wants to get away from, right? But Emily, you're also talking about, not just the path through high school to college to get into the 4-year degree. I mean, the jobs, the skills, you were talking about data science and all these sorts of things. We need calculus. We need people to have these classes and this knowledge if they want to get actually a career in these fields.
The thing that is just, looking at the framework, I'm staring at it, and there are so many parts of it that don't make sense, because data science is a real thing. That's a real career, and many companies are doing it. But it's based on calculus. Like, if you actually want to know what data science, if you actually are going to employ, if your job title is data scientist, you are using calculus. And I was talking to Stanford math professors about this, and it's like, data science, like, you can't just do it without understanding calculus. And the thing that is just kind of difficult for me to put my head around is the framework says at several points that data science offers an opportunity for more equitable math practices, and everyone can everyone can do well at data science. The implication being that girls and students of color, they specifically say, have found traditional math to be harmful because they are not able to, like, relate it to their daily lives. Okay, but how are you going to excel at data science without taking calculus? And also, to insinuate that, girls should and students of color should be taking data science instead of calculus literally makes no sense, because we actually just had the University of California and the California State University systems come out and say that schools were submitting this data science coursework as a replacement for advanced math for the admissions requirement. And kids were coming into the CSU and the UC not being prepared, because data science is not the same thing as calculus or even as algebra 2. And you need to understand those foundations, because, as you said, Nikki, everything builds on everything else. You can't just randomly...
You can't skip.
You can't just randomly learn data science without understanding how it functions. And so what California is proposing is sending kids to college less prepared than they were before. And they probably weren't even being prepared well before, because, many kids retake calculus. And it's specifically suggesting that girls and people of color do that when those are the very students that they are saying they want to see more of in these higher level fields. So the logic makes absolutely no sense on numerous levels. And
they're setting them up to fail, basically, because they're going to go to college and be like, I don't even want to continue this because I don't even understand what the hell I'm doing right now.
The answer isn't to dumb down, it's to lift up.
Yes, exactly.
100%. And what I fear happening, and I was talking to a lot of, math people in college and various things, is I fear that the districts that are wealthier and that have, very high achieving people living within there, they're not going to listen to the math curriculum framework, because it is only recommendation, and they're going to keep offering algebra 1 in 8th grade. They're going to keep putting more kids into calculus. They're going to keep sending them to better colleges, and that districts that maybe don't have as many resources, don't have as many qualified teachers, they're going to delay the algebra 1 till 9th grade, and then they're not going to send as many kids to calculus. And then what happens is the gaps are going to grow larger over time. And so that's the thing that is very disturbing to me. And, as a girl who took calculus, as a girl that doubted my own ability, and that was something that I feel like I doubted, just not because I got that message from my school or my parents or anything, but just because I was like, I can feel that I'm working at this so difficult, so hard, and more than I do in other subjects. But then to discover that you are able to do it, how insulting is it to have the state of California publish a document that says, oh, you might do better in a class that the UC and the CSU are saying is not even equivalent to advanced math?
Right. They're setting me up to fail, and you're not thinking I'm smart enough to get it if I had proper instruction. So what, just to kind of, as people are watching this, probably frustrated just like we are, obviously it's not mandated. Again, I just want to emphasize your school district does not have to do this. So I would obviously ask your school district what the plan is. I mean, is the answer just, again, not everybody can afford it or has the capability, but summer schools and private tutors, because no one's stopping you from educating your child at a certain pace if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And as Kim said, I mean, parents are going to find their own solutions, and they're going to do what's best for their kids. But for me, I just worry about, what about like foster youth? What about kids that their parents are not setting them up in that right way to achieve at the highest level of their potential? I mean, public education is supposed to be the equalizer. It's supposed to be for you can go to public schools and you can get the same level of education as you would at a private school. Like that's the ideal of the public education system. And I think what needs to happen, I mean, we should not be in a world where, the solution is outside of school, you're getting the education that you should be getting in school. Yeah. And one of the teachers that I spoke, it was actually very fascinating. I spoke to a teacher that was on the committee that helped kind of frame the original ideas behind the framework. She reiterated to me numerous times that teachers need to be higher quality, and that means having higher quality credentialing programs and actually higher standards in those credentialing programs, so that it's harder to become a teacher because you need better teachers. But then at the same time, we don't have enough teachers. And
right. So how hard do you want to make it?
Exactly. And so California has been trying to change some of those licensing and credentialing requirements. And so we obviously, I think what it comes down to is we need to pay teachers a whole heck of a lot better.
Ding, ding.
You're going to attract better teachers who are then able to, go through that more rigorous credentialing process, that more rigorous training process, so that they are equipped to teach Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and they're equipped to teach to a variety of kids and to instill in them that confidence and that Kim was talking about for her daughter, and that I know I had to get too. Just instill that confidence and that feeling of you can do it. Yes, it might be challenging, but that doesn't mean that you're not good at it, and it doesn't mean that you can't do it. So it's like a whole mentality shift that I feel like, for whatever reason in the US, we've not been able to achieve what, countries like Norway have, or then furthermore, countries like China, where I just read an article in the New Yorker where some kids are taking math 3 periods a day to just really practice and learn it. And I just think unfortunately in our system here, there's this kind of desire to just push kids through graduation, like, oh, you're done, our obligation is done, we wash our hands of it. But you didn't actually help the kids learn what is their actual right to learn as a public school student in California.
Yeah, it's when we were comparing ourselves, the United States, to other countries, we are behind, and it sucks. And unfortunately, the kids that are in school now, high school, our daughters, my son, Kim's son, soon enough, they're guinea pigs, right? It's going to be on the parents. And with all the talk about parental rights and being involved in your kids' education, it is very important. And yeah, I mean, Kim's daughter is taking advanced math. Mine's in private tutoring, but that's a privilege. That is a privilege that we have the resources and the money and the time to do that. And not every family does. And they depend on the public schools to kind of fill that gap. And unfortunately, like you mentioned, Emily, some schools aren't going to be able to do that. I appreciate. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a priority for me because my mom always told me we're not good at math. We're really good writers.
That's terrible.
We're really good at public speaking. We're really good at these things, these English
related things. I love the
right?
As
but
people.
We're not good at math. We don't do that. That's not our strong suit.
And that's terrible.
And so I never really tried. I just thought, well, I'm going to suck at this. This isn't where I'm going. So I never really got to the point where Emily's talking about, where she had that light bulb moment and everything clicked, because I just thought, well, I guess I'm just not a math person. Right. Yeah. So I was kind of set up that way, which is why I think it's really important, even if money is tight, to prioritize these things, because I don't want my kids to feel that way about that. I want them to feel like they can do math, they can do hard math, and they can succeed at it. And so I have to give them the tools to do that I never even thought that I might even want. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That's amazing, Kim. That's amazing. That's amazing that was your takeaway, and that you're creating the opportunity for your children.
Yeah. Good job, Mom. Good job, Mom. But what's funny, in just as you were talking, Kim, in my own household with my 2 kids, it is true that so my son, and I'm going to use these terms that we all say to ourselves, my son is excellent at numbers. He just gets it. He looks at me sometimes, he's like, obviously, Mom, the answer is blah, blah. It's amazing to see. Now, for me, I'm still like, carry the one. It doesn't mean I'm not going to try. Doesn't mean that I can't figure out the answer. My daughter's kind of the same way. Although, again, I've put her in tutoring, and I'll just random daily math problems, and she rattles off the answer correctly. And I'm like, yes, you can do this. And not everything in life has to come easy. But when you put in the work, sometimes the reward is so much sweeter because you worked harder at it. So that's
behind the scenes in the newsroom, my husband has always been on standby on election night. because I have to calculate the percentages of what's ahead and who's winning. So I'll do it, and then I'll call them up and I'll give them the numbers and I'll say, check my work, because I'm not going on the air unless I know it's right. Right?
That's awesome.
Like, that's how much I question myself as to whether I can get it right.
You can do it, Kim.
The thing is, I don't feel like I'm not intelligent enough to grasp these concepts, but I do think it's a lot of it is about confidence. So I feel like, and that's why I think it's the lifting up and not the dumbing down, because, if my kids can do it in a family that we're not good at math, right, then all these other people can do it too, regardless of whether they're foster kids or whether they come from disadvantaged homes, whatever. As long as we're trying to give them the tools they need, they can totally make this happen.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Great article, Emily. Honestly, I think it's going to give so many parents something to think about.